Since you've been playing around with the checkbox controls in the Arms Unlimited lessons, I thought it would be fun to throw a little bonus lesson your way to show you a fun little thing you can do by just slightly modifying that opacity switch code and using it as a simple way to do little flips on things like heads and hands. So let's take a look at this farmer man here and just set this up quickly. What we're going to do is we're going to just create a little checkbox that'll allow us to just scale flip his head so the whole head will flip right or left. Now the way this character is done with his eyeballs, he can definitely look over to the side there, but he can't really turn his head unless you do some kind of 2.5D rig on him, which we'll look at later on. But if you wanted a really full turn of the head, you could do sort of a cheat approach by flipping the scale on the head and having him just pop from one side to the other. And you can actually hide that pretty effectively with animation. If you know what you're doing, you can sort of hide that pop and make it look fairly natural. And we can set this up in the rig really simply, once again, by just modifying that opacity switch code. So let's take a look at how this works. We're going to start by clicking on the head controller here, and we're going to go ahead and add a checkbox control. And we'll name it Head Flip. And we'll maybe move it up to the top since it's sort of a controller for the whole head here. And we're going to lock the effect control window. Then I'm going to unshy my layers here, and we're going to go and find that head layer. And now I'm going to go ahead and option click, and I'm going to paste in that opacity code. And we just have to make a couple small changes. We'll of course start by pick whipping our checkbox here. And then we just have to change the property here from opacity to scale. And then we need to type in two values here because scale has an X and a Y value. And so we want to put this in brackets. So to flip the scale, we want 100, 100, and then minus 100, 100. Now we have the simple checkbox control that'll flip our head so he can turn his whole head one way or another. And as I said before, if you know what you're doing in animation, you can pretty easily hide a pop like that in the middle of a fast move with a lot of eases on either side of it. And you can even do it in combination with a squash and stretch control. So let's take a look at that. I've got a squash and stretch control already rigged up on this guy here so he can squash and stretch his head. And we're going to add that flip head checkbox to this guy so that we can squash and stretch and flip his head. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this effect control window, and I'm going to unshy these layers here. And once again, we're going to find that head layer. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to hit the controller button and make a null right at that point. And let's drag that down. And we'll call this G head flip. Now we're going to parent the G head flip back to the head controller, and then we're going to take the actual head comp here and parent that to the G head flip. So now that is controlling our head, and the head controller is controlling this. So by inserting this little interim null object in here, now we can add our expression code to the scale here without disturbing the expression code for the squash and stretch we've got on the scale here. Okay, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to option click on the scale value and paste in that opacity code, and we will just make our alterations here. Pick whip, change opacity to scale, and change the value. And now we can flip the head with our checkbox, and we can squash and stretch the head, and both work together without conflicting. So this is a nice simple little trick, and you can use it, for example, on hands. Here's a hand, and we've added a hand flip control, and now the hand can flip back and forth. Exactly the same setup, and it works with the hand selector so you can get more variation out of your different hand poses. Now flipping the hand like this won't work in cases where the artwork is clearly showing a palm in or a palm out, so it's not going to work in every situation. But with really simplified hands on simple characters, it's a really nice way to kind of expand the capability of your hand rigs. So I'm sure you'll find some other fun uses for this little slight adaptation of that checkbox control we've been looking at.